The Watchers from Ishana Night Shyamalan. It's a horror film about a group of people being stalked in the woods by supernatural beings. This movie is based on the novel by the same name. We follow Mina, played by Dakota Fanning. She works at a pet store and is given the responsibility of transporting a parrot to a zoo. While making this run, her car ends up breaking down in the middle of the woods in Ireland. She becomes stranded with a group of strangers here because the forest is inhabited by an unknown supernatural threat referred to as the Watchers. Mina and the gang have to survive in these woods while navigating the Watchers who come out at night to observe them in their little safe house. So the core subject of this film does seem a little bit vague in just about every sense of the word. It seems that it wants to be about being lost. To feel lost can mean a lot of different things, but it generally means to feel uncertain about yourself or your way of life. This feeling can manifest in several different ways, including low self-worth, feeling a general disconnect with other people, and constantly dwelling on the past rather than focusing on the present or future. In Mina's case, she shows all of these symptoms. She doesn't have a strong sense of dignity to the point where she goes to bars and literally pretends to be a different person. Her disconnect with others is depicted on screen metaphorically at the beginning of the film when she's going about her life, and the camera keeps everyone else's faces completely out of focus with its extremely shallow depth of field. And her past trauma is something that we get glimpses of throughout the movie, showing us that she has a lot of repressed emotions. This is in addition to the more literal definition of the word lost, which is what this movie is obviously about. It's about a group of people who are literally lost in the woods. So I liked the attempts at showing us that Mina generally feels lost rather than telling us. That said, I think those feelings that weren't ever explained were just a bit too subtle. I think that most casual moviegoers will not pick up on that symbolism and just go, why did she put on a wig and go to a bar? What was the point of that? That's one of the bigger flaws of the movie. It just didn't know which things needed to be told to us and which things could have just been shown to us for us to put together. For example, the movie spent a lot more time unpacking what exactly the Watchers are, but then leaves us in the dark on how exactly these haunted woods are causing a supernatural phenomenon. In a similar fashion, this movie gives us some occasional spurts of exposition through its mediocre dialogue, and then it just doesn't give its other main characters much of a story at all. Not all of it, but some of the dialogue was just absolutely terrible. It's not even that it was cringy, it was just that it was very stiff and amateurish. There were some lines that read like notes were taken from the Star Wars prequels. They just didn't sound like how people talk because of how direct they were. The characters just weren't fleshed out enough, not in their backstories nor their personalities. They were just completely flat and uninteresting. This can be attributed to the shortcomings of Ishana Night Shyamalan, but honestly, the performances were just totally lifeless. The same can be said about the majority of the film. There just wasn't enough intrigue for us to latch onto for basically the entire second act. And with the exception of a couple of jump scares, it just didn't feel scary at all. I'm not saying that a horror film needs to be really scary to be good, but that just makes it all the more disappointing because the bulk of the film was so boring. It's mostly just Mina and the gang exploring the woods, coupled with generic horror film tropes that don't always make sense. This leads me to the movie's biggest flaw. There were things about it that were just purely illogical. This film establishes rules for the behavior of the Watchers and the mysterious nature of the forest, and then it blatantly contradicts those rules. Like I'm imagining during pre-production, one of the actors going over the script and then going, "Hey Ishana, I see here that they're going for an escape attempt now." "Yep, that's right. But I thought the woods were supernatural and kept them in some sort of weird endless loop." "Yep, that's also right." So this is not a great filmmaking debut for Ishana Night Shyamalan, mainly just because the screenplay was bad. In many ways, her style is a reflection of her father's minus the expertise, but there were some things that were pretty decent about the movie. While some of the symbolism and directorial choices were a bit loose, some of them were really smart. The score sometimes pulls you in with its intense violins, and the cinematography is great. We can lump Ishana in with her dad and Zack Snyder, who are filmmakers who should just be directors because they have good ideas, but their screenplays just don't deliver. Overall, this was a very flawed and uninteresting movie. This was quite disappointing. I would not recommend watching this unless it becomes included in a streaming subscription you have and you just really can't think of anything better to watch. Unless, of course, you're a big M. Night Shyamalan fan. Then you might enjoy this because of how extremely derivative of his work this movie is. Thank you for watching this review. If it brought you any value at all, please give it a like. It really does help the channel grow. I'll see you later this week with my review of Tuesday.